Hello, I'm Andrew and welcome to another instructional video. Today we're going to be looking at basic back rank checkmates. We're going to look at ladder checkmates using 2 queens and 2 rooks, 1 queen and 1 rook, and how to checkmate only with a single queen and a single rook. And we're also going to introduce a concept known as king opposition. So looking at our first example, this is fairly straightforward. This is a rudimentary back rank checkmate. We simply capture our opponent's rook up here. We check the opponent's king, and because of this wall of pawns, they are unable to escape. There's nothing to interpose here, and there's nothing to capture our rook. So this is simply checkmate. In the second example, we have almost exactly the same thing. We can capture this rook, but notice it is protected by the rook on b8. But our queen also sees this square, so it actually doesn't matter whether we capture with the rook first or the queen. We're going to have the same result. Let's try with the queen first. This is check. The king can't escape. So they're forced to capture back with their rook, and now we come up, and this is another back rank checkmate. Okay, so in this position, black has actually created what's known as Luft, or air or space for their king. They've pushed their g-pawn forward, so they have g7, so this idea just no longer works. Yeah, I'm still winning, I've got a queen, but I'm not back rank checkmating here, because they can step forward to g7, and I'd have to checkmate them some other way. In this example, just going to go back here, our bishop cuts off the g7 square. So it's as though this space hasn't been created because the square is covered by one of my pieces, meaning this sequence of moves effectively is a back rank checkmate. Okay, so in the following example, I'd like to play queen e8, rook would take on e8, and then I'd capture back with my rook and hopefully checkmate my opponent's king, but their king is on f8. So after that exchange, they're going to be able to pick up my rook, and that's not good, that's not going to work. But I can throw in this queen e7 check first, forcing the enemy king over, and now I sack the queen, and after captures, this is mate, because the queen doesn't cover e8, she covers d8. Alright, so the following example looks like I might be able to pull off a back rank checkmate. I'm attacking this square twice, and it's only defended once, and the king is over on g8, not f8, but if I capture here and my opponent recaptures with their queen, I've just given up my queen and I can't bring my rook to e8 because my rook is pinned to my king. So I'm unable to move it, and if I move my king to try and protect the rook, then it's actually going to be me that's getting back rank checkmated like this. The queen is held in place by the rook. The king has nowhere to go. Okay, so technically this isn't a back rank checkmate because our opponent's king is on the edge of the board. They're not on the 8th rank or even the 1st rank. But it's very similar. The motif is the same. The king is on the edge of the board and barred by his own pieces, meaning rook a2 is checkmate. Okay, so now we're going to look at a series of what's called ladder checkmates. The first will be with 2 queens. A ladder checkmate is when we can use one piece to cut the rank in front of our opponent's king off, meaning that we can use the other piece to cut this rank off, forcing them backwards and further backwards and further backwards until we reach the edge of the board. Notice that the queens are always protecting each other here, so the king can never capture one of these pieces. They are nicely guarded by each other. And so this would be a checkmate on the back rank, and the other queen holds the 7th rank, so the king has nowhere to go. In this example, we're going to do this with a rook and a queen. Now, it's very important that the queen is on the outside, holding the rook in place, so that when we move the rook up to check the king like this, the king cannot capture the rook because the queen holds it in place. And we get very much the same thing. In this example, though, the queen is on the inside and not the outside, so if I play my queen up like this, my opponent's king is just going to capture, and I've lost the queen for no reason, all because the rook couldn't defend the queen. So what we might want to do is just move our pieces around until we reach the similar setup that we had in the previous example, where now the queen holds onto the rook, and no matter where our opponent's king goes, we can do this, cutting them off and sending them to the back with a nice ladder checkmate, and all is fine. Okay, so with 2 rooks, it's very much the same thing. We want them on adjacent files. We don't want them like this, because then we can cut the row off in front, the king can move laterally, and there's no way to get this rook up here. And if this rook were to do it, well then the king's just going to step in between, and we don't want that. We always need these rooks adjacent if we're going to do a ladder checkmate. But just notice that they can't protect one another like this. So as we do this, the king can get closer and closer to the point where if we were just to check here, they would capture our rook, like this. And so at this point, we need to swing the rook to the other side of the board, keeping it nice and as far away from our enemy king as possible. We're going to need to do the same with this rook now. And again, we keep them adjacent. We don't stack them like this. And before the king can get over, we will be able to achieve another ladder checkmate. Nice and simple. So let's say you don't have the ideal position with your rooks. The first thing you're going to want to do is just, cut off the first rank. And as the king moves laterally, you can just arrange them, probably best on the edge of the board, as far away from the opponent's king, and now you have this ladder checkmate idea. You can't play here, so all the way over here we go, and all the way over here we go, and as the king walks back over, we are sending him up to the back for a nice checkmate. Okay, so now we're going to learn how to checkmate with a single rook, and to do this we're going to need to get the king involved and also understand something called king opposition. So what is king opposition? Well, it's this. When the kings stand opposite one another, so that these three squares can't be occupied by either king. They're like repelling magnets. They will never be able to enter these three squares. Now here, white's king is said to have the opposition because it was white's king that stepped in front of black's king. Now it is black's turn to move. They are responding to the opposition. Let's say my king moved down here and black stood on this square on e5. Well, now black's king has opposition. It is white to move. Black's king has taken the opposition and it is white's king to respond. This concept is going to become important momentarily, so just hold it in your mind for now. Okay, so how do we do this with a single rook? Well, the first step is going to be the same as always. We're bringing the rook up and cutting the rank in front of our opponent's king off. So they can step laterally or backwards. Let's just say they go backwards. Well, we can walk them all the way to the edge of the board, and then we're going to look to get the king involved and deliver mate. But our opponent is very, very, very unlikely to do that. They're going to try and keep the king in the center of the board and, say, attack our rook. Okay, so we move the rook away, far away from the opponent's king. And as the king starts walking towards our rook, we're going to get our king involved like this. Now when we reach this position, the king is likely to try and attack our rook, and we're going to swing the rook over here. We now have a position where the rook holds up a fence between the two kings, and we are waiting for black to step into opposition with us, not the other way around. Let's have a look at what happens if black steps here and I take opposition with my opponent's king. Well, now they're just going to step this way, all right? But if we're in this position and my opponent's king steps this way and I chase him down the board and he steps here and I make a waiting move with my rook because I don't want to step into opposition with my opponent's king, I need him to step here. So I make a waiting move with my rook. And if he steps into opposition with me, well, now my king acts as though I have a second rook that's cutting off this rank in front of my opponent's king. So now I deliver a check. And he can't step forwards, and he can't move laterally because the rook now covers this rank. So he must step backwards. Now we do the same thing again. We're going to step here, inviting the king to take opposition with us. He is very unlikely to do that. He's going to run the other way, and we stay one square behind. Here, one square behind. Now notice, if he wants to stay on this rank, he has to take opposition, and we're going to check, and the king goes back. If the king decides, okay, fine, I'm not going to take opposition, I'm going to step back, well, now we just move the rook up, and it's absolutely fine. The king goes here, we don't want to take opposition with the king, we stay one square behind. If this, we are checking, and the king is going to the back rank. If not, we stay one square behind, like this, this. Now they're attacking our rook, so we've got to get the rook out of the way. And if this, being really tricky, we don't want to take opposition with our opponent's king, because then they step this way. So we just make a waiting move with the rook. Now if this way, we are checking and they're going to the back rank, and if this way, we stay one square behind always until they reach the edge of the board and have to step into opposition with us or go backwards. And now we deliver the check that sends them onto the back rank. And we do the same thing one last time, only this time it's going to end in checkmate. Our rook is being attacked, so let's get the rook out of there. And then when they step this way, stay one square behind if we can. If not, we're going to arrive at a position like this where we're going to have to make a waiting move with the rook. Remember, we don't want to step in opposition with our king because they'll sneak out this way. Now they can only step in opposition or walk to the edge of the board. They're going to be tricky, walk to the edge of the board, we stay here, they now are forced to take opposition, and finally we can deliver checkmate because the king holds these squares, and now we drop our rook back. Checkmate. Now with a queen and a king, we can do exactly the same thing as with a rook. Bringing the queen up, so she cuts the rank off in front of the enemy king. The king steps back, we do this. If the king moves laterally, we bring our king in until we get this situation again. Notice the king can't come this way to attack our queen like he would be able to do with a rook. We get this situation again, where if the king stands in opposition, we're going to check back, and so on and so on. The fastest way to do it with a queen and a king is to bring her to a position where she is a knight's move away from the enemy king. What that does is create a box like this, where the king is going to be forced to step closer to the edge of the board. Now we don't need to move her. She's already a knight's move away from the enemy king, so we could just move our king. And if the king steps back like this, we're still a knight's move away, so we just bring our king. And if this, let's get a knight's move away. If the king comes here, we get a knight's move away, creating a smaller box like this. And if the king comes here, we are already a knight's move away. We just bring the king, and if this, a knight's move away. King comes up here, we are already a knight's move away, so we move the king. And let's say the king steps here. We go a knight's move away, and now the king is going to step to h7. Now we have to be careful not to get a stalemate here, and the way we do that is when the king is on the edge of the board, we create a box of 6, like this. And we say, I'm going to put the queen on the outside of the box of 6, so that she holds this king in a pen where he only has 2 squares to toggle between. Now it doesn't matter what move I make with the king. This king is always going to be able to move between these 2 squares as long as I don't move the queen. Now I just bring my king close, and I get a position where I can slide the queen in for checkmate. The king holds my queen in place, and this is checkmate. Let's look at another quick example where we can bring our queen here and we've got a knight's move. So our opponent moves here, and we get a knight's move like this. And they move here, so we get a knight's move like this. And the box is getting smaller and smaller. Let's say they step here, we've got a knight's move. And now if they step here, we already have a knight's move. So we can just move the king. And when they step back, we're going to walk in for another knight's move. And our opponent's going to go here, and now they are on the edge of the board. So we're drawing the box of 6 and saying I want my queen here on the edge of it, not at the very edge of the board. Because if I came to the very edge of the board, then the king could step out this way. Box of 6, like this, and now I put the queen here, so I hold the king in this tiny pen where he can only toggle backwards and forwards. And now it is time to bring my king in, so that very soon I can deliver checkmate like this. I could even make another king move. They could walk forward, and I've got checkmate like this. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments what kind of instructional material you'd like to see next. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.